The weight of resentment. Why letting go is the only real victory we've all been told to forgive. We nod, we say, yes, I know I should, but inside, there's often a lingering voice that whispers, but they don't deserve it. That voice is the voice of resentment. And while it might feel justified, even empowering in the moment, it's quietly draining your strength. It's not the person you resent who pays the cost. It's you. Chapter 79 of the Tao Te Ching. When you harmonize bitter enemies, yet resentment is sure to linger, how can this be called good? Therefore, sages keep their faith and do not pressure others. So the virtuous see to their promises, while the virtueless look after precedents. The way of heaven is impersonal. It is always with good people. Chapter 79 of the Tao Te Ching opens the door to a powerful truth that most never fully step through. It says, when you harmonize bitter enemies, yet resentment is sure to linger, how can this be called good? In other words, even when the argument is over, when the deal is done, the hands are shaken, the divorce is finalized, something remains, a residue, a tension in the nervous system, a story you keep telling that ties you to the pain. This lingering resentment is like walking through life with a weight belt around your spirit. It slows your reflexes, clouds your perception, and blinds you to the possibilities of what could be now. But here's where the Tao turns conventional wisdom on its head. Instead of preaching morality or demanding we be the bigger person, it offers a deeper, more energetic path. It suggests that true wisdom lies not in enforcing your version of justice, but in understanding the energetic cost of holding on. It doesn't ask you to forget. It doesn't even ask you to like the person who hurt you. It simply invites you to release the internal knot that binds you to the past. Because the moment you drop that rope, you stop the energy leak. And that reclaimed energy, it becomes your power again. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, one of my senior students, let's call him Mark, was betrayed by a close business partner. They had built a martial arts and wellness program together, poured in time, effort, and vision. But behind the scenes, that partner had been rerouting funds, building a side brand, and slowly siphoning off students. When it all came to light, Mark was devastated, not just financially, but emotionally. He didn't just lose a business partner, and he lost trust, he lost sleep, and he lost faith in people for a while. Now here's the thing, Mark could have gone full retribution mode. Lawyers, social media smear campaigns, cutting ties with mutual students. He had every right to retaliate. But he didn't. Not because he was weak, but because he had been practicing the yielding arts for long enough to understand the deeper game. He told me, I realized that winning in court wouldn't make me whole again. What I needed to win was my peace of mind back. So instead of spiraling, he settled. Internally first, then practically, he let go. And that choice freed him up to rebuild something even better. He's now running a thriving program rooted in deeper alignment, with stronger community and zero toxicity. This is what Chapter 79 calls real harmony, not the false kind where we smile and move on, but secretly simmer inside, but the kind that says, I'll handle my internal state first. I'll stop feeding the cycle, because that's what resentment really is, an energetic loop. And every time you replay the story, tighten your jaw, or re-explain how you were wronged, you're reactivating the same pattern in your nervous system. It becomes part of your identity, and the longer you wear it, the heavier it becomes. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. Some betrayals cut deep. Some wounds take years to surface, let alone heal. But here's the Taoist perspective. You don't wait for justice to feel whole again. You create wholeness by withdrawing your investment in the pain. You transmute the energy by changing your internal relationship to the event. That's where the meditative arts come in. Because through practice, breath-standing meditation, movement, stillness, You learn to sit with the sensation instead of the story. And when you do that, the emotional charge begins to dissolve. Have you ever sat in stillness after a long day and felt your shoulders start to drop, felt your breath begin to deepen, felt the thoughts soften, not because they disappeared, but because they no longer hooked you? That's what it feels like to untie the knot. Not all at once, but gradually, over time. And each thread you loosen frees up more of your energy to live in the present. The Tao says, "The virtuous see to their promises while the virtueless look after precedents." That means while some keep feeding old stories and defending old grievances, others choose to live forward. They build from where they are. They keep their promises to themselves. They show up not with bitterness, but with presence. And in doing so, they live lighter, more open, more free. You've probably met someone like this, someone who, despite hardship, carries no heaviness in their body. They aren't naive, they've just learned to carry less, to cut away the rope that ties them to what cannot be changed. And because of that, they have more life force to give to what can. So, let me ask you, where are you still carrying resentment that no longer serves you? Where is the story louder than your breath? And what would it feel like to finally set that weight down? So how do we actually let go? Not just as a nice idea, but as a living practice. How do we stop replaying the pain and start reprogramming peace? The Tao never says, just forget it happened. It says, return to the way. Because when we're in harmony with the way, we stop resisting reality. And when we stop resisting reality, resentment begins to dissolve. But here's the mistake most people make. They try to let go in their minds. They think if they reframe it or understand it better, the weight will disappear. But the body still holds the score. That's why we turn to the meditative arts, not to escape what happened, but to transform how it lives inside us. Let's take standing meditation, for example. It's one of the simplest practices, yet one of the most potent. You stand still, feet rooted, spine aligned, breath slow, and you feel not just mentally, but physically what's tight, what's holding, what's resisting. And then you soften into it, not to collapse, but to yield, to cooperate with gravity, to let the tension sink out of your tissues and return to the earth. Over time, you'll notice something incredible. That tightness in your shoulders you thought was just stress was actually anger you never expressed. That shallow breath pattern you developed was your nervous system guarding against vulnerability. That knot in your belly was a grudge you've been holding for years. And as you release those places, not once, but consistently, you stop carrying the story on a cellular level. You stop being the wound, you start becoming the healer. Another powerful practice is yielding breath work. Here's a simple one you can do right now. Inhale slowly through the nose for 4 counts. Hold gently for 2 counts. Exhale softly through the mouth for 6 counts. Pause for 2 counts before the next breath. Do this for just 3 minutes, not to distract yourself, but to return to yourself. Each breath sends a signal to your nervous system. We are safe now. Each exhale unwinds the grip of fight or flight. You're training your system to let go in real time, because letting go isn't a one-time decision. It's a pattern interruption. It's a rewiring of the body, breath, and mind to default to peace rather than tension. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Until one day, you find yourself in a difficult situation. Someone says something that used to trigger you, and instead of tensing up, you breathe. Instead of lashing out, you pause. Instead of hardening, you yield. That's not weakness. That's presence. That's power you don't have to prove. The Tao says, The way of heaven is impersonal, it is always with good people. Let that sink in. The Tao doesn't play favorites. It aligns with those who align with it. It supports those who release resistance. It flows through those who flow. So when you practice letting go, not just emotionally, but energetically, you're not just being a good person. You're putting yourself in rhythm with the intelligence of life. And that rhythm starts to guide your actions, your speech, your relationships. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop chasing justice and start embodying truth. You become the calm in the storm, the one who can hold their ground without needing to fight. I'll give you another story. There's a woman in our community, let's call her Sophia. She had a falling out with her adult daughter. Years of miscommunication, hurtful exchanges, built up assumptions. And even though they lived 10 minutes apart, they didn't speak for over 2 years. Sophia began practicing with us. She didn't join to fix the relationship. She joined to reconnect with herself, to reclaim her center. And what happened next wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, but it was real. As she practiced yielding breathwork and standing meditation, something in her started to soften. The story she'd been gripping began to lose its emotional charge. The judgments began to quiet. The need to be right began to dissolve. And one day she told me, I didn't call her to prove a point, I just called to tell her I love her. And her daughter, who had been waiting for that signal, broke down crying. That call healed years of distance, not because someone won, but because someone yielded. This is the invisible path of the Tao. You can't see it from the outside. It looks like nothing's happening. But inside, the old patterns are collapsing, the wounds are being aired out, the energy is returning home. So what's your practice? What's your ritual for releasing resentment? What would it look like if today you started clearing that space inside, not for them, but for you? Let me leave you with this. Letting go is not about forgetting what happened. It's about refusing to keep bleeding from it. It's about remembering that your peace is too precious to be held hostage by a memory, and that by releasing the weight, you rise. So if you're ready to build a life around these principles, not just once, but every day, click the link below and start your 2-week trial. You'll learn how to integrate these practices into your mornings, your conversations, your challenges. You'll learn how to train peace like a muscle and cultivate stillness like a skill. And most importantly, you'll begin building an evolving life practice with the meditative arts. One breath, one yield, one release at a time. See you inside.